What's up? So I posted a video called The Real Cuba, and it shows what it's like to go to Cuba in 2014. But a lot of people want to know the do's and don'ts before they actually go somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about, from my perspective, some of the do's and don'ts of Cuba, and also address a few rumors I hear about Cuba. So the don'ts. Don't go to Cuba expecting to have easy communication with the outside world. Some of the biggest hotels in the biggest cities have computers you can use in the lobby if you want to use internet. And sometimes it's just completely down and doesn't work at all. There are a few internet cafes, but Cubans are restricted with the amount of time they're allowed to spend on the internet, so there's very long lines to use the internet in one of these cafes. We had to wait 45 minutes. If you don't speak Spanish, don't go to Cuba expecting to easily be able to communicate. Like any country, it's not that hard to find someone there that speaks English, but even though there's a very high education rate in Cuba, surprisingly not a lot of Cubans speak English. But it helps that I know enough Spanish to get around. Don't avoid people because you think they're trying to sell you something, or you think they're trying to ask you for money. When you walk down the street, people will come up to you, they'll want to talk to you, they'll want to know where you're from. Cubans are not allowed to leave Cuba, so when they see people from other countries, they want to talk to them, they'll want to find out where you're from, plus everyone there is really friendly. So when you're walking down the streets in Cuba and you hear, my friend, go talk to the person. So if you have a Cuban stamp in your passport and you roll back through US Customs, there's a good chance you can have a problem. You could even get interrogated. They might go through all your stuff. If you got cigars, regardless of if you actually got them in Cuba or another place, they could take those, and they do. So Cuba knows this obviously, so they intentionally don't stamp your passport. But some people actually have them stamp their passports. And people that do that are just really stupid. Like if you actually have them stamp your passport, like that's just a really dumb decision. You're like a really stupid person. I had them stamp my passport because I thought it was cool to have a Cuban stamp in my passport. And I didn't have problems when I went back through customs. The agent decided not to go through my passport. He saw my itinerary, said Cancun on it. He asked me what I was doing in Cancun when I responded, spring break. So he let me go. And that's the part where I went home and proceeded to bench smoke every single cohiba I got, except for one, all in one night. Don't go there expecting to find mojitos everywhere, because you won't. You could actually only find them and fried plantains in the tourist areas. You could also be a man and sit down at a local bar and drink straight rum with real Cubans. So if you're going to Cuba, make sure you absolutely don't, under any circumstance. Yeah! 1 minute. Where was I? Dues, right. So the food on Cuba, out on the streets and in small restaurants, absolutely sucks. Your options are usually cheese pizza, burgers that consist of the bun, some ketchup or mustard, the patty, and a piece of ham. The solution is don't stay in a hotel, stay in a casa with a real Cuban family. They will cook you real Cuban food. You will get chicken, you will get vegetables, you will get rice with some beans in it, and some flavoring and seasoning, and it will taste good. So make sure you stay in a casa with real Cubans and actually have them cook for you. Casas are usually 20, 25, and 30 bucks to stay in, and it's usually about 5 bucks extra to join them for dinner. If you're planning on traversing Cuba, always keep at least 200 bucks with you. You need to get back to the airport, and there's also a $25 tax to leave Cuba. If you're from the United States, you can't get money out there. You can't use a bank, you can't use credit cards. The money you bring is the money you have. So always keep enough cash on reserve to get back to the airport and leave. Because if you don't, then you're just screwed. So now a few misconceptions / quick facts about Cuba, man. Everyone that's been to Cuba, everyone that knows about Cuba, always say Cuba is a really safe place, the people are very nice, which is true. Whatever you do, don't talk about politics. Everyone says that. So we decided to test it out, and most people actually will discuss politics with you. And they won't even get weirded out by the question. I mean, we seriously walk into a restaurant like, what's up? Yo quiero una torta de jamón y queso. What do you think about your government? Castro. Obama. The United States of America. And most people would actually answer us. The most common answer was Cuba's awesome, the government sucks, love America, love Obama. Another misconception. People think that if you get into trouble in Cuba, you will be arrested for the rest of your life. If you get arrested by the police there, you'll be in a Cuban communist jail. No one will ever hear from you again. That's not true. My friend Nick got arrested the first night. We got separated and he was walking around the streets at 2 in the morning and the police just arrested him for not knowing where he was staying. And they drove him around the next day until he was able to find the casa that he was staying at. A lot of the streets look the same, so it's really difficult sometimes to find where you're staying at. So that's something to look out for. A lot of people think it's illegal for Americans to go to Cuba. And it is. It's illegal. You can't buy a direct flight from the US to Cuba, But you can go to Mexico, buy a ticket there, and fly over. People also think you can get arrested for going to Cuba when you get back into the United States. I came back from Cuba, Cuban stamp in my passport, backpack full of Cuban cigars, and I had 2 empty bottles of Cuban rum. So why are some of the restrictions finally being lifted from Cuba? I will tell you exactly why. So this was about 2 months ago. It was a pretty normal day. I was drinking whiskey, smoking cohibas with the president, when he turns to me and he says, "This is the best cigar I've ever had. Why do we still have trade restrictions on Cuba?" So basically what I'm trying to say is, the whole reason all the restrictions are being lifted in Cuba are because of me. You know, I'm kind of a big deal. So be sure to leave me a comment, something to do with Cuba, what you're wearing, or you could just thank me, you know, for giving the president the idea to start opening up Cuba. So, you know, if you want to thank me in the comment section, that's cool. So be sure to give this video a thumbs up, leave me a comment, hit the subscribe button, and check out my other videos.